Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om
Om
Namo
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om
Om Namo Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskritya
Narayana
Narayanam Namaskritya
Naram Chaiva Narottamam
Naram
Naram
Chaiva
Chaiva Narottamam
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam
Devim
Devim Saraswatim
Saraswati
Ato Jayam Udiraye
Ato Jaya
Jayam
Ashtaprayeshva Bhadreshu
Ashtapraye
Ashtaprayesha Bhadreshu
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata
Bhagavata
Sevaya
Sevaya
Bhagavate Uttama Shloke
Bhagavate
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke
Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki
Bhakti
Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki
Invatam Swakatah Krishna
Krinvatam Svakata
Krishna
Krishnaha
Punyashravana Kirtana
Punyashravana
Punyashravana
Kirtana
Hridyantasto hi abhadrani
Hridhayantasto
Siddhyantasto
hi
hi
bhadrani
abhadrani
Vidhunoti suhritsatam
Vidhuno
Vidhunoti Suhritsatam
Krishnaya Vasudevaya
Krishnaya
Krishnaya
Vasudevaya
Vasudevaya
Devaki Nandanaya cha
Devaki
Devaki Nandanaya Cha
Nanda Gopakumaraya
Nanda
Nandagopa
Gopakumaraya
Kumaraya
Govindaya
Govindaya
Namo
Namo
Namaha
Namaha
Govindaya
Govindaya
Namo
Namo
Namaha
Namaha.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare
We are
Krishna.
studying the 18th chapter. The title of the chapter is Mahārāja Parīkṣit was cursed by a Brāhmaṇa boy. So the first 10 verses we covered in the last session. So the topic of the session was Mahārāja Parīkṣit's birth, death, and how his activities are performed, how all these are great. So we discussed that Mahārāja Parīkṣit's birth was great. Why was it great? What was great about Mahārāja Parīkṣit's birth?
It
He
was
was protected by Krishna.
He was protected by
Protected by Krishna.
He was protected directly by Lord Krishna. So his birth was great. So he was protected by Lord Krishna from the Brahmastra thrown by Ashwadhama. And his death was great. Why was his death was great?
he was remembering Krishna at the time.
Remember,
He was continuously hearing Srimad Bhagavatam at the time of death. And he exhibited that he is fearless of death. Correct? Like generally people are afraid when death is about to come. But he was completely fearless, totally absorbed, totally surrendered to the Lord, and totally surrendered to his spiritual master, Sukadeva Goswami, and continuously was hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. So he perfectly died. So his death was also very glorious. And he surrendered to Sukadeva Goswami at the end of his life. So it was very glorious. And then his activities are great. What is the main activity he performed? That was described here in this chapter. Stopping Kali. When Kali entered his kingdom, he immediately stopped Kali's influence in his kingdom. Right? So Kali literally, after Lord Krishna left, that was the time the next days began, and Kali entered, and immediately he was able to prevent Kali's influence. So he single-handedly prevented the influence of Kali in his kingdom, in his entire kingdom. So he was, because Kali, when Kali is there, people especially unintelligent people. The intelligent people know how to the importance of life, and they perform devotion service and perfect their life. But the unintelligent and foolish people who are allured by material objects of this material world, they will be distracted. So by preventing Kali in his kingdom, he was able to protect the general mass of people. This is the real duty of the king or the head of the state. But in today's world, if you see, so the kings of those time, like Parīkṣit Mahārāja, who is a great devotee, he was protecting the spiritual life of the kingdom, of the entire population of his country, right? But in today's world, the best they can do is to take care of the material needs like roads, water, sanitation, whatever, right? These are the only things. The material aspect of life is what the today's leaders take care, right? So that was the main difference. So these are some of the great activities of Parīkṣit Mahārāja we discussed. So now in this section, the verses 11 to 17, we hear about the eagerness of these great sages of Naimisharanya to hear Krishna Katha. So the sages have assembled there to do what? Why were they all assembled in Naimisharanya?
To hear the Hari Katha,
No.
the pastime of the Lord's. Yeah.
Yeah, but that happened. But originally they all are there to perform a great sacrifice.
Yagya.
We'll
Yes,
read that now.
1,000 years Yagya, right?
So let's. Yeah. Ya Katha Bhagavata
Yeah,
Katha Bhagavata
Katha Niyoru Karmana
Kataniyoru Karmana
Gunakarma Shraya Pumbhi
Gunakarmashraya Pumbhi
Samsevyasta Bubhu Subhi.
Samsevyasa Bhusubhi.
Yeah, this verse we covered last week, but just to set context, we'll read this. Yeah, read this. Anyone?
Those who are desirous of achieving complete perfection in life must submissively hear all topics that are connected with the transcendental activities and qualities of the personality of Godhead who acts wonderfully.
So if anybody wants to achieve perfection in life, must hear submissively the topics of Lord Krishna. So here is a perfect combination of teacher, students, and the subject matter in this assembly here, right? In this means in the assembly of Naimisharanya, right, where Sutta Goswami was the perfect teacher, and the sages were the most inquisitive, and the subject was the eternal pastimes of Lord. So it was a perfect combination of all these, and so there was a great scripture that was produced out of this combination. And everybody would benefit by such hearing, for ages to come. This Bhagavatam would transform the lives of people because of this great combination of speaker and hearer and the subject matter. Yeah, so Prabhupada describes that. So let's read this one. Rishaya Uchuhu
Rishaya Vuchuho
Suta Jiva Samasaumya
Suta Jiva Samhasaumya
Ashvatir Vishadam Yasha
Shashvate Vishadam Yasha
Astvam Samsasi Krishnasya
Yasvam Samsasi Krishnasya
Dhyanam Amritam Hina.
Martyanam Amritam Hinaha.
Yeah, please read.
O good sages, the good sages said, O grave Sutta Goswami, may you live many years and have eternal fame, for you are speaking very nicely about the activities of Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead. This is just like nectar for mortal beings like us.
Shashvatir Vishadam Yashaha. Shashvatir. So may, O great says you may live eternally, right? and achieve great yasha, because you are glorifying the great Lord, who is the possessor of the greatest fame. May your fame also become very far and widespread. So Suta Goswami's fame was spread all over the world even today because of Bhagavatam. So, and it is going to be eternally sung because Lord was eternal, his pastimes were great, eternal, and so whoever sings these pastimes will also become eternally great, right? So Saswatir Vishadam Yashaha. And what does it do? Martyana Amritam Hina. Martyana means so people who mortal beings. For mortal beings, it is like Amrita. Amritam Hina means it is just like, because you are hearing continuously the pastimes of Lord, which are all eternally performed by the Lord, which are all eternal. Naturally, when you hear that, your life becomes eternal. So it's going to, by continuously hearing Krishna's pastimes, one's life will be transformed to be eternal, to be associated with the Lord, to participate in those pastimes. That's what this verse means. May your speaker, may your glory be spread all over the world, because you are speaking about the eternal pastimes of the Lord, and it will benefit everybody who hears, because these pastimes are eternal, and these are like nectar for people who are, the mortal beings of this world. Yeah.
When we hear about the transcendental qualities and activities of the personality of Godhead, we may always remember what has been spoken by the Lord himself in the Bhagavad Gita 4.9. His acts, even when he acts in human society, are all transcendental, for they are all accentuated by the spiritual energy of the Lord, which is distinguished from his material energy. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, such acts are called Divya.
Divyam, yeah. So Bhagavad Gita 4.9 is Janma Karma Chame Divyam Yavam Yo Veti Tattva Tattva Deham Punarjanma Naiti Mameti Sa Arjuna. Right? So one who hears these transcendental pastimes, which are, Divyam, they will not again take birth in this material world, because one who understands that Krishna's pastimes are eternal, and transcendental. So one should develop taste for this, then he never has to come back. Yeah. Continue, Prabhu.
Yes, ma'am. As one who understands this fact either from the Lord or from authorized sources is not reborn after leaving the present material body, such an enlightened soul is admitted into the spiritual realm of the Lord and engages in the transcendental loving service of the Lord.
Yeah. This is the secret to get out of the material existence and achieve Supreme Lord. Develop the taste for hearing the pastimes of Lord from those exalted devotees who are attached to the Lord. Right? Karmanyasmin anasvase
Karmanyasme
dhuma dhumra taman bhavan
Dhūmatmanam bhavan
yeah. Apayayati Govinda
apayayati govinda
Pada Savam Madhu.
Padma savam.
Yeah, please read.
We have just begun the performance of this fruitive activity, a sacrificial fire, without certainty of its result due to the many imperfections in our action. Our bodies have become black from the smoke, but we are fracturally pleased by the nectar of the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead, Govinda, which you are distributing.
So all these sages, they have assembled there to perform this great fire sacrifice, yajna. But they're saying there is no certainty of that result. Because generally a sacrifice will be successful when you have the Brahmanas who are, who can chant the names without any mistake, and they're very pure. They should be able to light the fire by mantras, and the ingredients should be pure as well. The ghee, the firewood, all of these ingredients should be very pure, and the participants should be full of Shraddha. So all these are, very difficult in this age. So that's why they're saying without certainty of the result, due to many imperfections. This is about 5,000 years ago. And now imagine at our time, if anybody performs sacrifice, there is absolutely no certainty of achieving the desired result, right? So our bodies have become black from the smoke. The result of the sacrifice is only that there is soot formed on the body of the sages. That's all they can say. But we are factually pleased by the nectar of the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, Govinda, which you are distributing. But we don't know about the result of the sacrifice that we are performing. But what we are 100% sure, right? Because we are personally experiencing, right? So we can experience in our own life, right? We are very factually pleased by the nectar of the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, Govinda. Because these pastimes are nectarian and eternal. We are pleased, very much pleased in our heart. Right? So this we are sure of the result. Yeah. So the Prabhupada gave a very nice purport. So I just, please read, Prabhupada.
The sacrificial fire kindled by the sages of Naimisaranya was certainly full of smoke and doubts because of so many flaws. The first flaw is that there is an acute scarcity of expert Brahmanas able to carry out such performances successfully in this age of Kali. Any discrepancy in such sacrifices spoils the whole show, and the result is uncertain, like agricultural enterprises. The good result of tilling the paddy fields depend on providential rain, and therefore the result is uncertain. Similarly, performance of any kind of sacrifice in this age of Kali is also uncertain. Unscrupulous, greedy Brahmanas of the age of Kali induce the innocent public to such uncertain sacrificial shows without disclosing the scriptural injunction that in the age of Kali there is no fruitful sacrificial performance but the sacrifice of the congregational chanting of the holy name of the Lord. Suta Goswami was narrating the transcendental activities of the Lord before the congregation of sages, and they were factually perceiving the result of hearing those transcendental activities. One can feel this practically as one can feel the result of eating food. Spiritual realization acts in that way.
Yajnai Sankirtanai Prayar Yajantehi Sumedasaha. So this real sacrifice for Kali Yuga is holy name, chanting of the holy name. Sankirtan is the real process of sacrifice. So that is the only thing that is guaranteed to produce result in Kali Yuga. And this coming weekend we have the grand Sankirtan, right? The Mahārāja. So that is guaranteed to produce results. So we should all take advantage of our weekly Sankirtan programs we have. At least once a month, we should all commit to that, because that is the sacrifice that will produce result, right? So we have so much faith in these fire sacrifices. We always were very attentive in the temple or elsewhere, because we have some kind of a faith that would work. But actually the real one that works is the Harinam Sankirtan, going out and chanting the holy name of the Lord in streets. That is guaranteed to work. Congregational chanting of the holy name, right? So that is what Prabhupada is saying here. Yeah. Tulayamalavenapi na sargam na punarbhavam
Na
Na
swargam
Sarvam na punarbhavam.
Bhagavat Sangi Sangasya
Bhagavat
Bhagavat
Sangi
Sangi
Sangasya
Sangasya.
Martyanam Kim Mutashisa.
martyana
Nityanam Kimutasishaha.
Shisha.
So now these are all verses spoken by these sages, right? So in the last verse, they told or they expressed that the sacrifice that they are assembled to perform, the Vedic sacrifice is literally useless. But the words spoken by Sutta Goswami were extremely pleasing to the heart. So they're expressing their happiness that they're hearing these pastimes, right? So now they are further glorifying the association of this great devotee, right? Tulayam lavenapi. Tulaya means that balancer, right? So you can weigh two things. That is called tulya, right? So you can weigh two things. So on one side, he's putting two things. What are those? Swargam na punar bhavam, right? Swargam means the heavenly planets. Punar bhavam means the process of coming back to the world. Na punar bhavam means not coming, means liberation. If you put swarga and liberation on one side of the tula, right? And on the other side, if you keep Bhagavat Sangi Sangasya, means the association of a pure devotee. Bhagavat Sangi means one who is associated with the Lord, right? So association of a pure devotee, Lavamatra Sadhu Sangha we say, right? So that Lavenapi means even for a short moment. Lavenapi. Lavena means moment. A moment's association of a pure devotee on one side, compared with Swarga and Mukti on the other side, right? There is no comparison, it says, right? So there is no comparison. One side is like completely full of weight, the other side is completely moved up to the other side, right? So there is no comparison between the two things. A moment's association of a pure devotee is far greater beneficial than both achieving Swarga as well as liberation from the material world. So please read.
The value of a moment's association with the devotee of the Lord cannot even be compared to the attainment of heavenly planets or liberation from matter. And what to speak of worldly benedictions in the form of material prosperity, which are for those who are meant for death.
Marchanam kim utasisha. It's meant for worldly people. So that is the value of moments association, because that can transform our consciousness fully, right? So we can see in the so many such incidents, right? Dhruva Maharaj, for example, a moment's association at the time with Narada Muni, he was transformed. Like that, we can see in the history of Bhagavatam, so many such pastimes where a moment's association transforms the future activities of the person, right? For example, all of us, we all came to Krishna consciousness not because we just visited temple. There was some devotee who gave his personal time and helped us understand Krishna consciousness. Without that person's help, association, sacrifice, time, we are not here. Correct? It always begins with the association. So, and now here we are talking about a pure devotee's association. A pure devotee's Lavamatra Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Siddhi Hoy, they say, right? So it's the same thing here. So these are the words of the great rishis, right? So they were all extremely pleased that they have the fortune of the association of Sutta Goswami, from whom they are able to hear the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. Yeah. So they're comparing their fortune with all the other things like heavenly planets and liberation from matter. Yeah. So these are so distinct. This liberation and bondage from material world, liberation from material existence and swarga are like not even comparable at all, right? Because these two are material things. So achieving swarga is through karma kanda, which is material sacrifices within the Vedic scriptures. And to achieve liberation also, you don't need to be spiritual. You just need to understand, you need to develop detachment from matter. It doesn't really require any transcendental knowledge of the pastimes of the law or anything transcendental in nature, right? The qualities of the Lord. We don't need to understand those things. So there is literally no comparison between the two. So that's what Prabhupada is saying in this. Yeah.
Spoken by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. When there are some similar points, it is possible to compare one thing to another. One cannot compare the association of a pure devotee to anything material.
That is why that Tulya is compared. One moment association. So bhakti has so many things, but within bhakti, one aspect is association, and that association with for a moment is compared to the result of jnana and result of karma, right? So that's what is compared here. So the entire process result compared to one small aspect of devotion service, and again they are not comparable, right? So that is the greatness of devotion service. Yeah, please read this part.
Devotional service is eternal. It has no end because it is spiritual. Therefore, since the assets of a pure devotee are completely different from material assets, there is no comparison between the two. Sutta Goswami was a pure devotee of the Lord, and therefore his association with the rishis of Naimisharanya is unique. In the material world, association with gross materialists is veritably condemned. The materialist called Yosit Sangi, or the one who is much attached to the material entanglement, women and other paraphernalia. Such attachment is conditioned because it drives away the benedictions of life and prosperity. And just the opposite is Bhagavata Sangi, or one who is always in association with the Lord's name, form, qualities, etc. Such association is always desirable, it is worshipable, it is praiseworthy, and one may accept it as the highest goal of life.
Here is a very important comparison made here. So the word Yoshit Sangi is used for a person who is attached to material things. Like, for example, somebody is attached to opposite sex, a woman or man, right? The association of the opposite sex is is less dangerous than the association of a person who is attached to that, who has that attachment to opposite sex. Let me repeat. So the more damage is done by us associating with a person who is a materialist, who has the attachment to opposite sex, than directly associating with opposite sex. Now, the opposite is also true. Opposite is Bhagavata Sangi. Directly associating with the Lord is now compared with the association of a devotee who is very attached to Lord. Just like Yoshit Sangi is more dangerous than direct association of material objects, similarly, Bhagavat Sangi, which is direct association of a pure devotee, is more beneficial than associating with the Lord directly, because we don't know the glory of the Lord. But we can understand the glory of the Lord through the association of a pure devotee. Is that clear?
Yes, bro.
Okay, let me repeat. So the benefit of associating with the Lord is compared with the benefit of associating with a pure devotee who is attached to the Lord. Our attachment to the Lord will develop more by understanding the devotional sentiment and mood of a pure devotee. Right? We become more devotee by associating with the devotee of the Lord, who has a strong attachment to the Lord, than directly trying to associate with the Lord. Right? Just like the association of a materialist is more dangerous than association of material object itself. Right? The opposite is also true.
So example was Krishna and the gopis. Gopis were the pure devotees of the Lord, and whoever associated with gopis became more loving to the Lord than just
by associating with the gopis, you really become more attached to Lord than directly trying to be attached to the Lord. Right? Because through the gopis, we understand the qualities of the Lord better. In their association, we develop deeper love. Making sense? Is that clear?
Yes, Guruji. Yes.
Ko nama tripche rasavit katayam. Mahattamaikanta parayanasya. Nantam gunanam agunasya jagmur. Yogeshwaraye bhavapatma mukhya. So basically in this verse, what the sages were really appreciative of the association they're getting from Suta Goswami. So when such interestness, eagerness is there, the benefit of Bhagavatam will be manifest in the heart of those devotees. Right? So that is very important point. As we are participating in this katha, hearing, our interest matters the most in terms of how much mercy we receive by studying the Bhagavatam. Yeah, please read this.
The personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, Govinda, is the exclusive shelter for all great living beings, and his transcendental attributes cannot even be measured by such masters of mystic powers as Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. Can anyone who is expert in relishing nectar ever be fully satiated by hearing topics about him?
So the Lord's pastimes are so great that even great lords of the material universe, right? Lord Brahma, who is the creator of material universe, Lord Shiva, who is the destroyer of the material universe, even they cannot measure these great pastimes of the Lord, right? So then can anyone who is expert in relishing nectar ever be fully satisfied by hearing the topic? So no one ever be satisfied, right, by hearing the pastimes of the Lord. It's always ever increasing desire to hear more and more. It's never satisfying. We can see from the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. When he was traveling in the South India, Gadadhar Pandit would read from Bhagavatam. And it is mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita pages that Gadadhar Pandit would read Prahalad pastime dozens of times. And Chaitanya would ask him, Gadadhar, read again the story of Prahalad. So he would just absorb himself repeatedly in the same pastimes again and again, never feeling satisfied, never feeling satiated. So that is the nature of the pastimes of the Lord. They're so nectarian, especially the pastimes of the devotees of the Lord, right? They're full of transcendental qualities, right? So they will never satisfy. This is so nectarian, they'll never be satisfied. But the right combination should be there. So the speaker, the hearer, and the subject, all these should be in the right combination. Then it will manifest that way.
Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma are two chiefs of the demigods. They are full of mystic powers. For example, Lord Shiva drank an ocean of poison, of which one drop was sufficient to kill an ordinary living being. Similarly, Brahma could create many powerful demigods, including Lord Shiva. So they are Ishwaras, or lords of the universe, but they are not the supreme powerful. The supreme powerful is Govinda, Lord Krishna.
So we hear the pastimes of how Lord Brahma was, Brahma Vimohan Lila, where Brahma was completely baffled by the greatness of the Lord, right? Even Lord Shiva, during the churning of the milk ocean, right? So churning of the nectar, we see how Lord Shiva was bewildered by Mohini Murti. So even though they are the greatest lords of the material universe, still they are, relative to Supreme Lord Krishna, they're very small, right? That's what Prabhupada is saying here. Yeah. Even they don't, the real thing is they don't, even they, in spite of being such great personalities, they never think that they understand the greatness of the Lord, right? So they themselves were bewildered at various instances. So it tells that, they themselves were not fully aware of the greatness of the Supreme Lord. And what to speak of us, mere mortals? We don't even have any understanding of the Supreme Lord's greatness and his qualities. Yeah.
There is no end to such transcendental discourses. In mundane affairs, there is the law of satiation, but in transcendence, there is no such satiation. Suta Goswami desired to continue the topics of Lord Krishna before the sages of Naimisharanya, and the sages also expressed their readiness to hear from him continuously. Since the Lord is transcendence and his attributes are transcendental, such discourses increase the receptive mood of the purified audience.
Tanno Bhavan Vai Bhagavat Pradhano.
Tanno Bhavan Bhagavat Pradhano.
Mahattamaikanta Parayanasya.
Mahatmaikantaparayanasya
Hare Rudaram Charitam Vishuddham.
Charitam
Shushrushatam no Vitanotu Vidvan. This verse describes the perfect combination of all these personalities. Bhagavat Pradhanu means one who is a pure devotee of the Lord. There are three components. One is Bhagavat Pradhanu, a great devotee of the Lord who is extremely well versed on the pastimes of the Lord, on the transcendental nature of the Lord. Harer Udaram Charitam Vishuddham, the great pastimes, the charita of the Lord, which is absolutely pure goodness, right? Harer Udaram Charitam Vishuddham, the absolute pastimes of the Supreme Lord. Shushuta Satam means, and eager audience who are extremely interested in hearing the pastimes. They're very, very receptive to hear the pastimes of the Lord. When this combination is there, a receptive audience, a great devotee who is fully equipped with understanding of the transcendental nature of the pastimes of the Lord, and describing the pastimes of the Lord, which are absolutely pure, Vishuddhim Charitam, then the narrations that come out of such discourses would eternally be glorified, right? Like Ramayana, Mahabharata, Srimad Bhagavatam, especially out of all of them, because it is dealing with pure nectarian pastimes of the Lord without any mixture of karma and jnana, right? So these pastimes are on the absolute platform. And when they are spoken by a pure devotee, heard by a very interested, receptive audience, discussing the pastimes of the Supreme Lord's eternal pastimes, then in that combination, a great literature would be produced, right? Or, great conversations will happen in such combination. Hmm.
O Sutta Goswami, you are the learned and the pure devotee of the Lord, because the personality of Godhead is your chief object of service. Therefore, please describe to us the pastime of the Lord, which are above all material conception, for we are anxious to receive such messages.
Hmm. Yeah. So they are very anxious to hear. That's what is the most important character, right? To achieve the mercy of the Lord, that is the part we can hold. If we are here but we are not really focused, then that benefit won't be there. So we hear with extreme enthusiasm, and the speaker should also be passing the message as it is, or be fully aware of the transcendental nature of the pastimes of the Lord. Then great pastimes will be discussed. So the three important ingredients to perform for a nice discourse are described here.
The speaker on the transcendental activities of the Lord should have only one object of worship and service, Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the audience for such topic should be anxious to hear about him. When such a combination is possible, namely a qualified speaker and the qualified audience, it is then and there very much cognitional to continue discourse on the transcendence. The professional speakers and the materially absorbed audience cannot derive the real benefit from such discourse.
So professional speakers means those who perform Bhagavad Sapta for some kind of remuneration. We see in India a lot of people come visit a temple and speak Bhagavatam for 1 week, and they are paid some salary for that. So, and the audience are also not very interested. They'll come for just time pass. So such combination will not really benefit anybody, neither the speaker nor the audience. So if we want to really benefit, we should have that eagerness to hear these pastimes like the sages of Naimisharanya. Then we can really benefit. Continue, Prabhu.
Now, Bhagavad Saptas are held for 7 days only. And after finishing the show, both the audience and the speaker become engaged in the material activities as usual. They can do so because the speaker is not a Bhagavatam Pradhana and the audience is not a Shushrutam as explained above.
Yeah. So such activities, these are called pious entertainment activities. These are in the mode of goodness. You're hearing Krishna pastime, but no real transformation of the heart. One will not, achieve the highest benefit that the scripture were to offer, right? So that is the situation. Savai Mahābhāgavata Parīkṣit
Savai Mahārāja
Yena Pavargakhyam Adhabra Buddhi Jnanena Vaya Sakisabditena Heje Kagendra Dhvajpada Padamulam Please read.
Translation. O Sutta Goswami, please describe those topics of the Lord by which Mahārāja Parīkṣit, whose intelligence was fixed on liberation, attained the lotus feet of the Lord, who is the shelter of Garuda, the king of birds. Those topics were vibrated by the son of Vyasa, Srila Sukadeva.
So the sages, so Bhagavatam, we already discussed these pastimes. Bhagavatam is not chronological, meaning it's not like, okay, this chapter is done, this chapter is going to start. So we hear, the words align in, not in perfect chronological order. So We already heard a lot of pastimes, Narada Muni, inspiration, and all of that is already discussed by Suta Goswami. But again, here these words are coming because now actually Parīkṣit Maharaj's pastimes were described. So, it's not perfect in order. Or we accept this. So now the sages were asking about the pastimes described by the Sukadeva Goswami and heard by this great devotee Parīkṣit Maharaj, whose intelligence was fixed in liberation because he is about to leave the body. So he is like completely fixed, absorbed in hearing the pastimes of the Lord, right? So we are very eager to hear those topics. Please speak about those pastimes. They're expressing their desire to hear these pastimes of from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Yeah, please read, Prabhu.
There are three classes of devotees, namely the Prakrita, Madhyama, and Mahābhagavata. The Prakrita or third class devotees are temple worshippers without specific knowledge of the Lord and the Lord's devotee. The Madhyama or the second class devotee or the first class devotee sees everything in relation with the Lord and the Lord present in everyone's relation. The Mahābhagavata therefore does not make any distinction, particularly between a devotee or a non-devotee. Mahārāja Parīkṣit was such a Mahābhagavata devotee because he was initiated by a Mahābhagavata devotee, Sukadeva Goswami. He was
Yeah, go ahead. He was equally kind.
He was equally kind, even to the personality of Kali, and what to speak of others.
So we heard in the past times that were described a little ago, how he was even kind enough to Kali by giving it, but he is very intelligent. He intelligently told Kali to stay in 4 places where generally his population, his praja will not participate in those pastimes. The places where the 4 regulative principles are broken, yeah, you can stay there. But practically in Parīkṣit Maharaj's kingdom, nobody violates those 4 regulative principles. So practically there is no place. And then he was given the place where gold stays. Right? So that was the option that was left to him. So here the description about 3 levels of devotees is mentioned. Mahābhagavata, or in other words also called as Uttamadhikari, who does not distinguish between devotee and non-devotee, materialist, spiritualist. He doesn't distinguish. He thinks everyone is a better devotee than me. That is a Mahābhagavata. And here it is mentioned, Parīkṣit Maharaj is one such devotee because he is equally kind to Kali, who is the lowest of all personalities, right? As well as other regular people of his country. So he is Madhyamadhikari he distinguishes between those who are favorable to devotees, those who are favorable to the Lord, and who are non-favorable, who are envious of the Lord. And he will focus on helping the favorable devotees so that they can achieve the Lord, right? He will simplify or help their path in their path to achieve the Lord. And Kanishtadhikari or Prakrita devotee, he is the lowest of all the devotees. He's still not, his faith is not fully fixed. And he can fall down at any time. He has great faith in the deity form of the Lord, but he does not associate with the devotees. He does not value the association of devotees. A pure devotee or a Madhyamadhikari really values the association of devotees. But a Kanishtadhikari does not know the value of the association of the devotees. So these are some distinctions that are discussed here by Srila Prabhupada here. Yeah, continue, Prabhu. Yeah. I can't hear.
So there are many instances in the transcendental histories of the world where an impersonalist who has later become a devotee, but a devotee has never become an impersonalist. This very fact proves that on the transcendental steps, the step occupied by a devotee is higher than the step occupied by the impersonalist.
What are some of the examples? Anybody remembers the examples of an impersonalist turning into a personalist?
Shukadeva Goswami.
Sukadeva Goswami, when he was born, he's already a liberated person. But
Kumaras.
Four Kumaras.
for Kumaras, yes, yeah, that is
Adi
a standard
Shankaracharya.
example.
Adi Shankaracharya.
Adi Shankaracharya is a devotee inside the heart, but externally he
Always impersonalized.
behaved as if he is an impersonalist only all his life. He is Lord Shiva. He is Lord Shiva, and a great devotee of Lord Narsingadev specifically, but he never thought that externally. Yeah. Yeah. Please read, Prabhu.
Simple knowledge of liberation is material knowledge. Actual freedom from material bondage is called liberation, but attainment of the transcendental service of the Lord is called the perfect stage of liberation.
So if you want to get liberated from material bondage, the attachment of to the material things, one does not need spiritual knowledge. For example, Sankhya philosophy is not spiritual. Sankhya is about understanding the nature of material world, dividing it into the different divisions, right? So seeing the nature of matter behind everything, that is called Sankhya. By doing that, if you suppose you are attached to gulab jamun, but you understand what is gulab jamun, literally it is just the flour, sugar, water, oil mixed in a certain combination. So a Sankhya philosopher considers every material object in its constituents, in its primal constituents, and therefore he develops a kind of detachment from those objects. He's not anymore attracted by the forms of this world because he only sees the constituents behind the forms. So that doesn't really require spiritual understanding. Spiritual understanding, or the understanding the transcendental nature of the of Lord, is completely a positive domain. This is all negation of the negative. So liberation, to achieve liberation, is like coming to neutral state, zero. And what devotees perform is all in the positive side of the axis, right? So on one side of the axis is all negative things, material things, and there is zero, which is the state of liberation from material bondage. And on the positive side is all the bhakti or devotion service. What we express as as a dance or singing, these are expressions of love towards the transcendental. So naturally the activities are transcendental. So these are the positive aspects of spirituality, right? I hope it is clear, right? So one need not be really to achieve liberation, one need not be really spiritual. He doesn't need to adopt a spiritual process. One can just achieve that through Sankhya philosophy, understanding, or Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga doesn't give the positive aspect of spirituality. Tanna param punyam asam asamvritardham
Tannaha param punyam
akyanamachad bhutayoganishtam
Yoganishtam
akyahi ananta charito papannam
Akhyānāṁ
Parīkṣitam bhagavatābhiramam.
Parīkṣitam Bhagavatābhirāram.
Yeah, please read.
Thus, the narrations of the unlimited, but they are purifying and supreme. They are spoken to Mahārāja Parīkṣit, and they are very dear to the pure devotees being full of bhakti yoga.
So please narrate to us the narrations of the unlimited, for they are purifying and supreme. Right? Akyahi ananta charitopapannam. Ananta. Lord's glories are ananta. His Akyavi means describes these ananta pastimes of the Lord. Right? Parīkṣitam Bhagavatābhirāma. And what is the nature of the Parīkṣit? Parīkṣit is totally surrendered to the Lord. Right? So he is very, very pure devotee of the Lord. By hearing the questions asked by Parīkṣit and answers spoken by Sukadeva Goswami, our life will become perfect. We want to hear those narrations. Maharaj, so they were spoken to Maharaj Parīkṣit, and they are very dear to the pure devotees. So Bhagavatam is extremely dear to even those who are fully liberated. And this is the subject that is relished by even the purest devotees on the highest platform of transcendental realization. For example, Lord Chaitanya would relish hearing Bhagavatam again and again, the same pastimes, because of the nature of the pastimes. Yeah.
What was spoken to Mahārāja Parīkṣit and what is very dear to the true devotees is Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is mainly full of the narrations of the activities of the Supreme Unlimited, and therefore it is the science of Bhakti Yoga or devotional service of the Lord. Thus it is para or supreme, because although it is enriched with all knowledge and religion, it is specifically enriched with the devotional service of the Lord.
Though it has knowledge, like the process of creation was described, and the religion was described, but most important is it is enriched with the devotional service of the Lord, Srimad Bhagavatam. So it is fully nectarian. I think this finishes this section. Any questions or discussions or points you want to speak? So this is eagerness. This whole section is about eagerness of the sages of Naimisharanya. Right? So we discussed the 11 to 17 verses. The first two verses were about comparing the sacrifice that is performed by the sages in Naimisharanya versus the process of hearing and performing devotion service. So the sages were unsure about the result of the sacrifice, but they are very satisfied by hearing the Katha of the Supreme Lord. Right? So they glorify both the speaker Sutta Goswami and they glorify the glories of the Krishna Katha in the next verse. And they express that the glories of Lord are unlimited and it is never satisfying. Onama tripched rasavit kathayam. So one will never be satisfied by hearing about the pastimes of the Lord. Right? So, and the qualities of speaker, hearer, and subject matter were described in the next verse. So the speaker is a Bhagavat Pradhana, means one who is fully absorbed in the pastimes of the Lord. Subject matter is Hare Udaram Charitam Vishuddhim. The subject matter is the nectarian pastimes of the Hari, of Lord Hari. And the hearer should be Shushrutam, very eager to hear. When such thing happens, the pastimes, that is the best combination. The speaker is a pure devotee, hearer is extremely eager to hear the pastimes of the Lord, and the subject matter is the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. So when such combination happens, the best subject outcome comes that will be glorified eternally in the history of the world. So that is how the Bhagavatam was created. And the last two verses, Parīkṣit attained the Lord's lotus feet by hearing narrations of the unlimited. So that ends this section. We'll, Mataji, you have a question?
No, Prabhuji, no question, but I really like that verse where compared moment of devotees association is better than other material. I mean, that is very, we take it for granted, devotees association, but it's so powerful and it is given in Bhagavatam, which is very nice.
Multiple verses. There is one more verse like this. Tulyama lavenapi nasvarga napur bhavam. Lavenapi, just moment's association of a pure devotee is more valuable than both Swarga and liberation combined together on the other side. Yeah. Nice. Thank you. Anything else?
Prabhu, I have a question. I think the verse was beautifully explaining about the when you can connect with a god versus you connect with the devotees, which one is like the better, because devotees can glorify Lord. And similarly, the example of Uddhavji, when he was living with the Lord, he was getting a knowledge, but when he went to the Vraj, he was getting a bhakti. So that was definitely a good understanding. But still, when we say, when we are devoting for the Lord, for the devotional service, we are chanting his name. So a Lord is not different than his name. So when you are associating with Lord, isn't that like getting to the highest? I'm still trying to understand that Bhakta can definitely glorify, but we are still putting a devotional service unto Lord. So
I think the point that is stressed is we cannot understand the glories of the Lord by our own association with the Lord. But through hearing about the Lord, through a pure devotee whose heart is fully soaked in bhakti, we really appreciate God's greatness, right? So that is the main point, because we are not there yet.
Yes, okay. Yes, definitely. Got it.
I think the other point could be viewed as, the Lord emphasizes on, the devotees more than himself.
Yeah.
Right? So he is more happy if we associate with devotees than, going directly to him.
That's true.
Right. So it's there's another angle to it.
That's true. Yeah, agree. It's a good point.
And also, Prabhu, you talked about like how there are some professional discourses where the speaker gets paid a salary and people are just coming for time pass. It's important to identify those and try to stay away from them, because there's no spiritual progress from there. As you said, right, they are just pious, time-killing activities. That's it.
That's true. Yeah. So they do not really transform. They do not develop that bhakti eagerness to, go back to Krishna in our heart.
Yeah. Yes.
So we all were, before coming to Krishna consciousness, we were all been to all these kind of programs, right? In our past life before this Krishna consciousness. How much did we commit ourselves by hearing those? We can all question ourselves. We don't need to answer here, but only by the association of a sincere devotee did we develop the taste for, further developing our devotion service.
Yes, bro.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll stop recording.